Yeah, people wonder a lot about the new evangelization. What is it? What's new about it? And I would trace a lot of it back to John the 23rd and Vatican II. Vatican II was a missionary council, was to bring the faith out to the wider world, to make the church a more apt vehicle for the proclamation of the gospel. I think that's the root, really, of the new evangelization. John the 23rd announced the council in the presence of this giant globe, and the idea was to bring the Lumen Gentium, Christ, the light of the nations, out to the world. Then, of course, his successor, Paul VI, was very interested in evangelization. His great statement, Evangelii Nunciandi, 1975, says that the church doesn't have a mission, the church is a mission. Well, that's right out of the Vatican II inspiration. Who's at the synod that produces Evangelii Nunciandi but the young Archbishop of Krakow, Karol Wojtyła? So it's no surprise that 3 years later, when he becomes Pope, he makes evangelization, the new evangelization, central to his magisterium. Now, he gave it an expression that I find very helpful. He said, it's the old evangelization. It's always declaring the Lordship of Jesus. That's always the same thing. What's new about it, though, he said it's new in ardor, it's new in expression, it's new in method. The first one maybe is the most important. I came of age in the years right after Vatican II in this country when I think we lost a lot of ardor. It was a time of doubting and dissenting and questioning and kind of hand-wringing, what are we about? And I think John Paul intuited that was undermining the mission of the church. So a new ardor, a new fire, a new enthusiasm was needed. But secondly, it's got to be new in expression, because it's the age-old faith, but we're expressing it now in a new time. And we have to find the expression that will appeal to people today. So how do you talk about God, about Jesus, about the church, about redemption in a way that people won't find off-putting today? So new expressions. And finally, new methods. I think he had in mind, even though he gave that speech in the early 80s, these burgeoning technologies. And now, of course, we've seen this explosion. I've compared it to the Gutenberg period, this explosion in communication technology. We've got to use those methods. And so the new evangelization is new in the measure that it uses not only print and film and radio, but now all the new media as well. I've been really impressed as I talked to Father Paul Stein about how St. Joe's is, I think, in its new program, laying the foundations for new evangelization. I've made new evangelization central to the curriculum at Mundelein, and I'm really pleased to see how it's happening here. I'd name a couple things. One is that great stress on philosophy. I've already spoken about it, but to know classical philosophy is to know, in many ways, the language that our tradition has used to think through and to proclaim the faith. To know modern philosophy is to know where this culture today is coming from. Press questions a little bit today, you'll find philosophical roots. Think, for example, of the ethical relativism of our time. Your truth, my truth. That's good for you, not for me. Who am I to impose my view on you? You tolerate me, I'll tolerate you. We'll go back just a little bit, and you'll find roots in people like Jean-Paul Sartre. You'll find them in Friedrich Nietzsche. You'll find them go all the way back to Leibniz and Descartes. A lot of the moves made in modern philosophy produce the culture we have now. If you want to engage that culture, you need to know it. So I'm very pleased that St. Joe's is emphasizing the philosophical. I'm also really pleased with the way they're emphasizing communication, both in its classical and modern forms. Classical communication, and I'm a great devotee of Aristotle. Go back to his rhetoric. What makes a speech persuasive? He says ethos, logos, and pathos, character, reason, and passion. How do you communicate the truth well? The classical sources there are really good, really helpful, rhetoric, speech. But then, these new forms of communication we have, the new technologies, how do you use them creatively? It's just not automatic. You have to be trained in how to use internet and YouTube and Facebook and all that business. And so I'm really pleased that St. Joe's is strongly emphasizing communication.